Okay, now we're ready. Are you ready to let the applicants in?
Yeah, if you want to let them in, that'd be great.
All right. Whenever you're ready, Greg.
Sounds good. Good morning. It is February 24th, 2022 at 9 a.m. We'll call this hearing to order. This meeting is being held via electronic participation pursuant to Section 70 of the Illinois Open Meetings Act and under the current declaration proclamation, and with written determination of Zoning Board of Appeals Chair. Meetings being recorded and live streamed at lakecountyil.gov/watch-ZBA to allow for the public the ability to watch the meeting. Remote attendance has been made available via Zoom through in-person attendance on the second floor conference room of the Lake County Permit Facility, 500 West Winchester Road in Libertyville. As a reminder to the board members, if you're able to share your video, please do so and ensure your camera's on speaking and voting. If you wish to speak, please raise your virtual hand. If board members as well as members of the public and county staff would please keep themselves muted during the duration of the hearing unless you're speaking, it will help avoid any uninterrupted comments and noises. At this time, a roll call from Brett.
Member Hockney. Here. Member Peterson.
Here.
Member Reindl. Just want to press your space bar, Member Reindl, so we can hear you. I see him talking, so I'll put him down as present. Member Starkey.
Here.
Member Roche.
Here.
Chair Kaplan.
Here.
We have a board of 6 members today.
Perfect. We do not have our new member with us today.
No, not today.
Okay.
Training.
Perfect. Wanted to make sure it wasn't there. Sounds good. With that, we will have the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty for all. Please note select items from the application as well as any additional evidence to be presented by the applicant or members of the public ahead of the hearing may be presented via screen share during the course of the hearing. Physical evidence germane on topics to today's agenda have been previously submitted. However, if there are additional items that the petitioner or members of the public desires to submit for the record, please indicate by raising your virtual hand and staff will coordinate with you to share. Public was invited. Written comments received prior to today's hearing have been provided. I believe we received one yesterday from Brad as well. Comments received during the hearing will be read prior to the close of the hearing. Public in attendance that want to provide comment may do so by raising their virtual hand, and staff will call on the appropriate at that time. Questions and comments from the public will be heard after the presentation of evidence by the petitioner or the representative, and after the members of the ZBA had a chance to ask questions. The comments will be limited to 3 minutes. There are no additions to the agenda, no deferred matters, and no other business. So at this time, if you are going to be making any comments or statements or asking questions, if you raise your right hand, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yep.
Thank you. With that, I will turn it over to Brad Denz for the staff presentation on ZBA case 737-2021.
Good morning. Applicants seeking a variance have a burden of proof to the Zoning Board of Appeals that the required standards of UDO have been met, even if there are no objections to a variation. At the conclusion of today's case, the ZBA must make a finding of fact identifying its reasoning for granting or denying a variance. The board may require the petitioner to meet certain conditions so that the use allowed by a variance will not have a negative effect on nearby properties. The applicant and the public will have the opportunity to make suggestions regarding appropriate conditions. For ZBA case 000-737-2021, our variance requests to 1, reduce the side yard setback for a retaining wall from 4 feet to 1 foot. 2, increase the maximum height of a retaining wall from 6 feet to 13.0 feet. 3, increase the maximum allowed impervious surface ratio from 0.3 to 0.33 for a single family dwelling. The applicants are Robert Charles Atwater and Jenna F. Atwater, who are the record owners. Property address is 25823 and 25819 West Oak Lane in Ingleside, Illinois. It is approximately 0.64 acres and is a conforming lot in the R3 zoning district. The legal notice for this case was published in the Daily Herald on February 8th, 2022. Correspondence for this case has been received from the divisions of engineering, building, health, and public works. And outside of your application, staff sent the board correspondence from the adjacent property owners of 25873 and 25851 Oak Lane in Ingleside. The applicant, Bob Atwater, present the application today, and staff or I will be happy to take any questions.
Sounds good. Any questions from the board of staff? Hearing and seeing none. Mr. Atwater, we will turn it over to you for your presentation.
All right, thank you. Thank you for taking the time for meeting us today regarding these variances. As I go through each of these items, feel free to stop us throughout. I intend to covering a lot of information here. So I'd like to start by bringing forth some past history and a process thus far to date. We've been working on this plan and approval process for over 3 years in the effort to ensure the building process and permit would be as smooth as possible. In March of 2019, we sat with county and multiple members of the building department to get insight with our architects and builder before investing more financially and pursuing this any further. At the time, there were two concerns that arose. It was the fact that the building didn't have gutters and the wall. In the meeting, they mentioned that we'd simply need a variance for the wall. And it was presented to us that it would not be a major process. At the close of the meeting, we were asked to pay in full for permitting fees, and that would be ready to start. I'm grateful and decided that we waited as we'd be under immense pressure 3 years ago. After that meeting, we were given a county member to work with, and this stage was a year and back and forths regarding measurements of the wall. We had recently completed the appropriate changes to the plan with our architect, amending these concerns. Additionally, our structural engineer made the appropriate changes to satisfy the comments from the county about the wall. If we thought this construction would have not been a possibility, we would not have pursued it. We were under the impression that all of our documents, designs, and engineering were in order. The county was also aware at the time that we were buying the property to the east 25807 Oak Lane and consolidating all 3 lots to minimize the impervious calculations issue that was initially talked of. It's not incumbent on Oak Lane as our neighbor 25765, also the house to the east, has a compound on 3 lots. She also owns a house to that, which is to the east, and is used as a rental at 25751 Oak Lane. I'm sure the board has reviewed the comments from the building department, and I'd like to add some more comments to those. Additionally, I'd like to reference similar situations that are within the immediate Lake County and Long Lake area specifically. Regarding the retaining wall, we have spoke with county, and this is my first official run at a variance in this county. And with the wall, please understand from an aesthetic take, the wall's total height includes the required railing, but instead we have a monolithic look. So if the railing was installed on top of the wall, it would hence be a 10.04 foot wall as opposed to the 13.004. That includes that railing of 36 inches. Recommendations of the county's review, they mentioned there are quote unquote potential offsite impacts and are out of scale with the surrounding area. I've submitted a packet, which I believe everybody has received, and there are numerous examples of sites that have walls in excess of 6 feet in high visible areas such as lakeside, front yards. We are on the lake, so front yards are the lakeside, along high and low traffic roadways. 2 specifically to point out as of right now: Wilson Road, north of the railroad tracks on the east side of the street, 35529 Olive, which is also on Ingleside. It's a lakefront property. They also mentioned potential offsite impacts. This statement is very subjective in our opinion. The walls were designed, in fact, to prevent offsite impacts. The intent of the walls in part is to contain all watershed to the subject property. Deeming this a potential is assumptive and opposite of what could be said. These walls also have potential offsite improvements, assumptions that could not be valid reason for granting or denying a project. As previously referenced, larger walls have been built nearby within the county, creating potential offsite impacts. Certainly, there's a potential for anything but the intent of the walls is to contain the watershed to the subject property and allow for a conforming driveway. I lived on Oak Lane since 2008. The township rebuilt the road in approximately 2009. If at the time they considered the potential negative impacts to the community, they would never have built roads. During the course of this project, in my home at the time, which was 25851, we lost power 3 times, severing our direct burial electric cable that ran under the road. That certainly did not plan to they did not certainly plan to damage the power, but they did. If they also considered at this point only the negative potential, we would never rebuild roads within our communities. Comment 1 on the county's answers was exceptional conditions peculiar to the applicant's property. The area of the lot is significantly larger than the majority properties along Oak Lane. This is not entirely true. 25873. Is it potential we can pull up a map to share, or do you guys have a map?
Can put
of
a,
the
yeah,
street?
I can put the map on. Give me just one moment.
Okay. Will it have addresses as well, Krista? Okay, if we scroll to the west there. Or zoom out a little bit, Chris. Zoom out, that should be good if we will. Okay, perfect. So 25873. Do we see that one?
Yep.
With the pool? This is a lot and a half at roughly 21,250 square feet. Again, I pulled measurements off of Google Earth, which is relatively somewhat accurate. I don't believe our percentages are that far off. 25765, which should be to the east of us, is 3 lots, and already mentioned is 49,205 square feet, or 1.13 acres. Our property, or the subject property at hand, 25819 and 25823, is 2 lots at 27,908 square feet. 25883, which is going to be to the right at the end of the S turn there. Krista, if you'll scroll. Right there. Is 18,000 square feet. The remaining 4 houses are approximately 12,000 square feet in terms of lots. To summarize, of the 9 houses, we own 33% of them, and the remaining 6 houses, 3 or 50% of them are larger lots if comparing them to the normal 12,000 square foot lot that is being set as a standard reference from the county in regards to their lakefront lots. In there are 4 of the 9 houses that are larger lots, or 45% of them on Oak Lane. Additionally, there are numerous other homes surrounding Long Lake that have lots larger than what is being deemed quote unquote lakefront sizes. The size of the combined lots is not out of scale with the Long Lake community, as referenced from recorded tax parcel information. I'm not going to necessarily have you pinpoint them unless you guys are requesting them, but I'm just going to reference them. 25812 West Larkin Lane on the South Shore is a 1.3 acre lot. 35148 North Milwaukee Avenue is a 1.96 acre lot. It's on the point. 25656 West Long Beach Road or Drive is 0.57 acres. 25638 West Long Beach Drive is 0.59 acres. 35231 North Wilson Road is 0.88 acres. And the last one I'm referencing is 35363 North Everett Road is 1.42 acres. The size of the combined lots, in keeping with the overall lake community and the departure from small lake lots with dilapidated cottages. This, quote unquote, again, from the answers, the topographical condition is in fact not uncommon in the area. That is correct. As we discussed with the county at previous meetings, we cannot build our driveway to follow uniformity and harmony to the street. The existing driveways on Oak Lane are non-conforming to code and extremely unsafe. The three houses to the west of the subject property, which are the narrower lots, I think you're pointing to those. That's one more to the right. It'd be the one right next to ours. That one, yes, and the two to the west. Have at least, again, this is a guesstimate, a 30% grade drop, quote unquote, that dumps them into their lots from their driveways. And they are not requiring challenge we face today as we built before the regulation was, they're not required, they have, sorry, excuse me. Their driveways have approximately a 30% grade change as I lived in the furthest east house of these three subject properties that we're kind of talking about on the Google Earth here. The driveways are approximately 30% grades that drop them into their lots, not requiring challenges that we are facing today as they were built before the regulation was amended or changed. So we cannot have driveways that are that extreme anymore. In order to build our driveway, we were required to accommodate the grade changes with the installation of a wall to prevent the unsafe and steep grades. Additionally, Oak Lane is a non-conforming street, and as such, we need the space to turn our vehicles around safely. The narrow size of Oak Lane contributes to exceptional conditions peculiar to the applicant's property. The narrow street, extreme grade changes, and the lake create a perfect storm, quote unquote, of uniqueness to the property as it relates to the Lake County as a whole. How many other properties within Lake County have this unique attributes to them? From the county, quote, Long Lake shores around the majority of its perimeter are subject to the same steep grading, which affects several dozen lake confronting properties in the surrounding neighborhoods, in many cases necessitating the use of retaining walls and other grading features for the construction of homes, end quote. I do not feel this statement is entirely true. What shorelines are being considered? They did not reference any. The term majority is used. That would be more than half. If you look at the shorelines of Long Lake, the areas that are at water level or just above, and many of them are actually in flooded areas because they are so low, are as follows. The west shoreline, these are homes along Wilson Road, are at water level or near water level. The homes at the west of Oak Lane, specifically Meadow Lane and Myrtle Lane. If we go to the south shoreline, there is Long Beach, Augustana, Chicago, Rockford, James, and Lake. If we go to the eastern shoreline, there are areas within Round Lake Beach, and if we go to the the north shoreline, on the east side of the lake, Lakeshore Drive specifically, from the Forest Preserve property to the east. And there are also, as you can see in this, which we'll visualize on the south side, there's an island and near our property. Oh, you zoom back in. There are two islands on this lake. You got it right there. There's one, and then there's one just south. Yep, that's the other one. All of these properties are close to water level. So what other areas do have steep grades? It's the east end of Oak Lane, portions of Olive, portions of Marion, and portions of Everett. And to note also, along Manitou Creek, most of those houses are at water level. This certainly does not constitute a majority of the Long Lake community has properties similar to ours. The shore east of the subject property is similar in topographical aspect, but less severe. Our house and a neighbor to our east are at the highest point on the lake. As stated in a response, there's a 38-foot grade change between the street to our top of seawall. Additionally, the subject property has a grade change along the street of 7 feet from east to west. Comment 2, practical difficulties and hardship in carrying out the strict letter of the regulation. It is stated that many homes have steep terrain without the support of retaining walls. Outside of the difficulty for a pleasant residential property, many of these existing homes have structural conditions that have arisen from lack of appropriate retaining walls. As stated previously, these homes have non-conforming driveways, and in the event these homes make modifications or came with current guidelines, they would have to raise their driveways approximately 10 feet to be compliant. Additionally, the statement says that these parcels do not have the support of a retaining wall. In the current state of these homes, there are many existing retaining walls that are not compliant with the current ordinance as written. Can you zoom into Oak Lane again? Sorry, Krista, please and thank you. Again, to the east there, that first house, 25883, is usually flooded when there are heavy rains. 25873 has a retaining, I'm going in order along the street. 25873 has a retaining wall on the property line in excess of 6 feet. It's been pointed out in the packet that was given. At the time of construction, I was a next door neighbor. And it was not asked for my consent nor my opinion when these walls went up. I certainly would have approved this, understanding complications involving these types of elevations. That S-turn also I got from Kim Keekston from the Grant Township. That grade change is 13% going up that S-turn. 25851, house that I lived in previously, has a 6-foot plus retaining wall on the east property line. It's also a picture in your packet. The foundation along the garage that's separate from the house, it's approximately 8 feet. And the non-conforming driveway, as I lived there, there were cars unattended during ice storms and the cars would slide down the hills on their own, unattended. 25873 has a retaining wall in front of their parking pad right off the street there, in front of that garage, that is over 6 feet and a non-conforming driveway. 25837. Oh, sorry, I did that one. Sorry, let me go on. 25831 has a 6-foot wall foundation around its garage and a 3-foot retaining wall within 2 feet of the street, a non-conforming driveway, and in recent years has had multiple smaller retaining walls in their front yard along the lakeside. The subject property is so severely graded that in recent times the inspector has refused to walk down when it was either icy or rainy in fear of slipping. If this grade is not safe for the field site inspector, how can it be safe for building or families? 25765 is at the top of the hill and has grade tables. As we spoke with her probably well before codes were in place. Her late father had graded terraces or tables in the back that each table has a grade change of approximately 3 feet as it continues to the lake. 25751, the last house on the lake. If you're on a street, you cannot see the front door. That's how steep the grades are. Oak Lane as a whole has numerous retaining walls as installed by the township to retain property owners land along the road. These walls are within 24 inches or less from the road. Thus, the wall is not uncommon to the current conditions and existing precedent that is set forth currently by the neighbors. Additionally, if current residents choose to improve their site, the area and the lake similar retaining walls would be required. From the residences we can up the street, this is going to refer as a starting point at 25873 up to our subject property, which would be the east side. From 25873, they have an increase of elevation along their street because there's a retaining wall that was done during the improvement that runs on the north side of the street, again, being less than 2 feet off the curb. From 25873 to the next property, it is an 18-inch rise in elevation. 25851 is a 12-inch rise in elevation. 25873 is a 24-inch rise in elevation. 25831 is a 4-foot rise in elevation. And then 25819 across the entire property has a 7.5-foot rise in elevation. This is a total elevation change of 18 feet, just from our neighbor to the subject property, or neighbor to the east to our subject property is 11.5 feet of elevation change just in the road alone. Quoted again from the review was several other homes along Long Lake and Oak Lane as a whole are constructed with much less massive and encroaching retaining walls or similarly sloped properties. Which other homes, as referenced above, have similar extreme grades like the subject property? There are no direct comparisons, hence this is unique. From the report again, the applicant has the ability to construct a single-family dwelling in compliance with the retaining wall height and setback requirements of the ordinance and thereby obtain a reasonable use of this property. The situation does not constitute a particular hardship, nor does it warrant granting the requested retaining wall height and setback variance. As mentioned previously, we met the county 3 years ago, and it was presented to us that a variance would be a quote unquote, not a hangup or a sticking point, rather a formality. Had we been aware that this was going to be an issue, we would not have invested the money we have spent or the design and engineering of this home. Our investment in time is part of the hardship. We had worked with the county and they have repeatedly said that they were here to support us, guide us, and help us through this process. The feedback we received is that you will need, in many cases, necessitating the use of retaining walls and other grading features for the construction of home. This does not help us come to a solution. We are at a 3-year process to simply see if we can build and if this is a viable project. From the report again, an approval of this size retaining wall could set a precedent for allowing similarly sized walls in the area. The uniqueness of the property, subject property, is that by which very few other instances of this required variance would be required. I believe it would be very difficult to find another property with the same slope and terrain challenges as this site has. As I've noted and previously presented, this wall is within the precedent as set forth by other walls that have been already constructed in the area for far less extreme yet similar reasons. The walls along Oak Lane itself are set so close to the road that a vehicle, you would hit the wall if your tire touched the curb. This certainly is not within the letter of the ordinance, but the unique attributes Oak Lane presents, and that is what was required to rebuild the road in a non-conforming manner. Part 3, harmony with the general purpose and intent of zoning regulations, quote unquote, ordinance is intended to protect the health, safety, and general welfare of existing and future residents of the incorporated area of Lake County by protecting landowners from adverse impacts associated with development that occurs in unincorporated Lake County. The installation of the wall does exactly that. It protects the neighbors from adverse impacts. The wall allows for all of our watershed to remain on the subject property. This not only protects neighbors in the immediate west, but additionally all the neighbors, quote unquote, downstream of the subject property. The subject property, by installation of this wall, will additionally be capturing all, quote unquote, upstream water flow from the neighbors to the east, again protecting the neighbors to the west. All this information is contained within the engineering packet previously submitted. It is the current state of the subject property drains towards the current residential homes. This would provide a dramatic improvement to the entire community of Oak Lane and on Oak Lane. Oak Lane floods, if you're not familiar with, the street does flood and is impassable on average about 5 weeks of the year due to the flood waters on both sides of the waterway. There's a little pondish area to the north of Oak Lane as you get to Wilson. And the fact that the containment of the watershed of the subject property may in fact decrease that burden of the local road. Part R in the code, I believe, is providing adequately privacy, light, air. In and of itself, the applicant's development proposal is representative of attractive modern design of high value. However, the project must be considered within the context of its immediate surroundings, which is typified by residential structures and site improvements of much smaller size and scale. The additional height of the home upon the earthen platform formed by the retaining wall structure may have a significant negative visual impact upon the adjacent property owners, introducing development that crowds the homes on the immediately surroundings, introduces a visual barrier to the adjacent properties by interrupting the enjoyment of natural light at various times of the day. The wall, in fact, provides for additional privacy in the area where privacy does not exist. The subject property has a natural 60-foot tree screening, that the neighbor has no eastern sun, and this wall will not impair or interrupt that natural light from various times of the day, as the sun does set in the west. And the wall would be to the east side of the tree on the west side that will remain undisturbed to provide privacy and property delineation. This existing line of trees is taller than the height of the proposed wall. Thus, the trees provide more of an impact on quote unquote privacy, light, and air than the wall would. This wall does not create a visual barrier to any homes. The impact of this wall is limited to that of one home. The neighbor immediately adjacent to the subject property is the only one that would be impacted from a visual standpoint. The neighbor signed off on this and is so approved by the populace in which it governs. The project within the context of its immediately surroundings is not out of line. If we were to follow the statement, in all construction, no progress would ever be made. No buildings would ever be larger, and the properties would never improve. The scale and size of this project is cohesive with that of the surrounding homes in the community. As previously discussed, the requested retaining wall is not out of character for unique characteristics of Oak Lane. The height of the house is within the codes of Lake County. It is also no different from the majority of the homes surrounding Long Lake as it relates to density. For example, when I lived at 2585 Oak Lane, it's 3 feet from the property line, and the neighbor to the west is roughly 20 to 30 feet away. This is lake living. Homes are close. We're all family. We're a community. There's very little to no privacy between any of the homes and properties currently. There is no more crowding of homes that doesn't already exist, as stated before. Balance and harmony within general purpose and intent of the Lake County Code. If we consider harmony, the main piece of the answer is there is none. Not on this street, nor in the immediate surrounding areas. Many of the surrounding homes in the area have substandard rotting wood siding, abandoned vehicles in their yards, cars parked in their front lawns, boats parked in their front lawns, and so on. We are asking to approve this wall so that the home can be built, will raise the overall home values in the area. Additionally, it will set precedent for nicer homes and change what is typified by the area. As unlike any other lots, as unlike any other lot this fits. In terms of standards, there are other walls that cover entire lot lines and exceed the maximum height. The wall will be positively impactful from a visual sense. It will, from a street view, a lake view, and aerial view, it will not impact anything. As a visual, as well as from a functional perspective. In keeping with being harmonious and in balance, we must consider the lake properties. If we can go back to the map, Krista.
Yep, just one moment, please. Okay. You should see it now.
Yes, if you go to Christmas Island, which is just west of just here, was built in 2001, has a plan view footprint. And when I'm saying footprint, this is just the surrounding of the house that I took off of Google. Has a plan view footprint, not including impervious spaces, being driveway, pools, and so on and so forth, is 4,900 square feet. If we can go to the point, which is going to be dead east. Everett's that next point to the east, Krista, if you go down.
Oh,
sorry.
I misunderstood.
Go, if I'm looking at the screen, to the right, up and to the right. Yep, straight up. See that point up there? Yep. That is 35363. Everett has a footprint of 6,320 square feet. The garage, which is directly to the north of it, has a footprint of 1,833 square feet. That was built in the last 2 or 3 years, completely in a floodplain. The subject property is proposed at 5,087 square feet, and the garage is 495 square feet. The home is keeping with harmony of the lakefront community. The neighborhood, when you pull up the S-turn, has a beautiful house completed in 2010 that is 25873 Oak Lane, that does not match the over 100-year-old houses that started as cottages? Is this out of harmony, or is this a new harmony slowly evolving? The retaining wall at the proposed location and dimensions could be detrimental to the surrounding properties, which was quoted in the report. The word could is used in this comment. As previously mentioned, this is subjective and speculative. The position set forth is negative, and there are no reasons on how this could be detrimental. It could be nothing but positive. The home values can go up 200% because of this wall. Could is not a fair statement. Conversely, this wall does provide many benefits to the surrounding properties. Approval will set future precedent for other similar requests, is a comment in the report. As previously stated, there are no other properties that the county has specifically stated that are 46 feet in grade change from front to back and 11 feet of street elevation next to a non-conforming home to the east. The statement is broad and subjective. As far as precedent, there are walls. You've seen my exhibit presenting all the different walls that I found in the neighborhood. All over the lake, and it is necessary as those homes and even the county has performed for a requirement for improvement. The precedence has been set by the county and other home construction that at times there is a need for a variance. We believe that this is a fact in one of those cases. Again, keeping up the map, if you will, Krista, to put the street in perspective, which will also be mentioned in part 2 of the variance, because I'm looking at setback and the wall height. If we look at 25883, the lot size is 18,000 square feet roughly, 5,000 square foot of impervious space. It is also considered, as they stated in our letter, a compound. It has 3 structures. And it is a 27.7% ISR ratio. 25873, 21,300 square foot lot size, 8,150 impervious. It's a 38% ISR ratio. Has a 6-foot retaining wall along the property line, a foundation that's within few feet of the property line that runs roughly 92 feet. Note this house was built in 2009, and as the watershed pours, as I lived at 25851. This entire property slopes off to the east and west. And my understanding is that the watershed was to be contained and that was passed or enforced starting in October of 1992. None of this site follows that letter of the law. 25851, where I previously lived, the lot size 13,650, impervious space is 7,428, an ISR ratio of 54%. It has a 6-foot wall along the property line and the foundation over 6 feet acting as a retaining wall and a non-conforming driveway. 25873, 12,600 square feet approximately, 5,600 feet of impervious. It's a 44% ISR ratio. Also a compound, has a coach house, a garage and its home, and a non-conforming driveway. 25831, 12,000 square foot lot size, 6,900 square foot impervious space, 57% ISR ratio. Has a 6-foot plus foundation for its garage, and at the street approximately 2 to 3 foot wall and a non-conforming driveway. We then have our subject property. Then we have 25807, where we currently live. It's a 12,000 square foot lot, 4,700 square foot of impervious space, and a 39% ISR ratio. 25765 is the next 3 lots to the east, is 49,207 square feet approximately, 8,500 square feet of impervious space, and 17% ISR. It is also a compound having multiple structures. If you can continue to scroll east, Krista, to Olive Lane. And if you scroll into 35529 Olive Lane, I believe is yep. I got this information for Krista. I don't know if it was an actual building permit or one of the bigger permits, but it was from 2019. 35529 Olive Lane was built. I noted last 10 years, but I don't know what the permit was. It's a 9,900 square foot lot size. The impervious space is 6,000 square feet. That's 60% or over double the recommended by county of impervious space. Their walls exceed, which is also in the packet I gave you pictures of, 6 feet and are on the street lot line and the property line. It's also a compound recently built. Regarding impervious, since we met the county, they knew that we were buying the lot 25807 Oak Lane, and that we were offering to consolidate. However, the county seems that they're concerned with other items other than, future pieces. So they're not considering our consolidation into our impervious calculations. We are asking for 33%, 3% over. Again, not considering two items. We brought up impervious pavers, and there was a calculation when we designed this that was giving us an additional 3%, hence the 33% total. So we are only allowed 30%, hence the variance of 3% over. It also does not take in consideration consolidating 25807 Oak Lane, which would make this conversation completely gone. Exceptional conditions peculiar to the applicant's property. Every house in the street is over the impervious but one, and they are significantly over and non-conforming. The county is aware that the consolidations of lots that will eliminate this discussion. Number two, practical difficulties or hardship carrying out the strict letter of regulation. The current property, as are most on the lake, are outdated and added on cabins from over 100 years. Harmony with general purpose and intent of zoning regulations, previously discussed as stated above. To summarize, we are asking the board to approve the variances as set forth and discussed. Please, as you consider this vote, your conscience knowing that we have invested a large amount financially after our talk with the county 3 years ago. Please keep in mind some key points of these variances. The subject property elevations and grade changes are extreme and unique, far more unique than any other property surrounding Long Lake. The proposed walls and locations are not uncommon, and many similar walls can be seen in the immediate surrounding areas. The non-conforming street, non-conforming infrastructures along the street, non-conforming existing homes make the subject property unique and exception to the rule. Based on all the unique characteristics, the approval of these variances shall not set precedent. It is unlikely that a property so unique would arise. The overall plan of the walls and new home are harmonious and complementary to the new trends around the lake. The IRS overage is minimal as compared to adjacent properties and may be offset by the installation of pervious pavers or consolidation of the lots. Each department division has stated no objection. Lastly, we are aware of the neighbors directly adjacent to the property and around the lake have sent in the board letters of agreement. The county is in agreement. The community is in agreement with this exception to the rules given the extreme circumstances and would like the variance to pass. They are excited for the continued positive growth and improvement to the community. In closing, we want to thank the board and various departments within the county for your diligence in this matter. We are hopeful that you may now understand the uniqueness of this property and the challenges we are faced with and have been faced with. Our intent is to follow the lead as set by others before us and improve the Long Lake community. We're humbly asking for the board to approve these 3 variances so we can begin the permitting process and make this Lake County and area a bit more beautiful. The style and architecture is that of the most famous architect, Frank Lloyd Wright, reflecting a prairie style home, and Illinois being the prairie state, this would be harmonious. We are proud Lake County business owners and longtime residents of Lake County. We look forward to raising a family in Lake County and living in this great area for many years to come. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Atwater. Appreciate the thorough presentation. Board or staff, do you need to take a break at all before we're going to go into questioning? Just want to make sure everybody's okay.
Well,
all right.
By all means.
Rhino, is that you needed a break?
Yes, by all means, we should take a break.
Okay, let's take a, I've got 9:47. Let's take a break. We'll reconvene at 9:55. 9:55, we'll reconvene. We're on break.
Do it fine.
We'll come back on in about 1 minute. John, just so you know, you're unmuted, so we can hear you, but that's okay.
I beg your pardon.
Just want to let you know that you're unmuted, so we can hear you. So don't go singing while we're sitting.
Oh, yeah, sure. It's the idea.
We've
And
heard your voice.
I was told to keep it clean too.
That's good.
Greg?
Yeah.
We have one piece of correspondence that arrived in our inbox last night at 11:30.
Okay.
It's a couple paragraphs long. I can read it in the record and just put it on the record and we can move forward.
Cool. Sounds good. When we get to that, we will.
Very good.
I've got 9:55, so we are back on record, and we will start with questioning from the board at this time. We'll start with Member Hockney.
Yeah, well, I certainly, that was a lot of information, very, very thorough information. So it's really difficult to ask that many questions, but I guess the first question I would have, is it my understanding that with the wall we're talking about includes the fencing on the top, the railing?
No, it does not include the fencing. I presented, sorry, I have a 3-year-old that's looking for a diaper change right now, so I apologize.
So it's actually a 13-foot wall with the railing.
It's 13 foot,
foot wall, including the railing.
including the railing. So we are looking for a monolithic look that would have stone cladding on that side. And it was asked of if we reduced it by 3 feet, that we put the railing on top. It's very similar to the wall on Wilson Road that's in your packet. It has a railing on there that's 3 feet. So that wall is, I forgot, I measured Wilson Road. I don't have that up, but that wall is a certain height, but it has a 3-foot railing on top of it. So if you
So
take
what
from the
you're
top,
proposing is a 10-foot, 4-inch wall plus a 3-foot railing.
yes.
That's what you're proposing.
And ultimately, yeah, but the wall would just continue up to act as that railing. So ultimately, the height of the wall that would include that railing would be 13 feet plus or minus.
That's what I mean. It's 13 feet inclusive of the railing.
Absolutely, yes.
Well, I want to be sure we're talking about the same thing.
Yes, yes, yes.
And with regard to the size of the house, I understand it was roughly 6,700 square feet.
A footprint, square footage is, I didn't go off the actual square footage of the house. I don't know everybody else's square footage, but to put it in comparison from a plan view, a site plan view or aerial view, it is, let me find my notes here. Hang on. I believe 5,000 square feet roughly, and a 495 square foot garage, 5,500 square feet total.
I know in a report we have, it says 6,773.
I think that is, it's including all the impervious space that was in the site plan. So
Brad, would you want to clarify on the square footage for Denny?
Sure. So from the report, the square footage of the house,
Yeah, I
So
think
six-
that's what Denny.
There's 6,773 square feet family, single family dwelling.
that's correct. That's what's stated in the report.
right, but I believe that includes, Brad, if I'm correct, I mean, I measured the house, I have the plans, the house measures. If you outline the whole house from an aerial view, it's approximately 5,000. It's including hard space, the pool deck area, and driveway space as well. That would bring it to 6,000.
So what was listed, what was submitted by your consultants was the 6,773,000 for the single family residence and garage, the detached garage, which I believe is located in the front.
Correct. That's from an ISR standpoint. Yes, that is correct.
Oh, and you've been working with an architect, I understand clearly.
Yep.
So you have renderings of it? I would have helped if I'd had a rendering showing the various elevations.
They've all been submitted in a big packet. I have 36 by 42 inch sheets that were given to you with isometric views.
I have no other question. I would just comment that with all that information, and I appreciate all the information. I want to make that clear. I just have no way to respond to all that information of all those different pieces and parcels of property around the lake. So, I mean, at this point, I'm just kind of trying to ingest all this information. I just have no way of responding.
I understand. I'm sorry to overwhelm.
I'm not, I appreciate all the information. It's gonna take
Yeah,
a long
thank you.
time to ingest all that.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks, Denny. We can always come back to everybody too if you've got follow-up questions. Member Peterson.
Yeah, I would agree with Member Hockney that there's a lot of information that was shared with us and this morning. And, just visiting your site, it was confusing in and of itself, just the site visit, because I wasn't quite clear on which house until I got more into it. So you're going to tear down both homes, both residences. Basically, you're going to tear down all the structures on the property, correct?
That is not confirmed yet. So again, no different than we can talk as our impervious space is in line if we consolidate lots. I can't say the intent is yes, minus the boathouse and potentially the garage on the other house. But again, I can't answer that question fairly without us. I can't say that fairly without knowing what the county is going to approve or disapprove. This specifically is appointed to 25823 and 25819. So the reason for the variance is all based off of those two lots. So I can only answer based off of those two lots. Our intent was why we bought 25807 was yes, to consolidate, to eliminate the impervious calculations issues that may arise. But again, regarding this to a point, the future, that's part of the whole permitting process. To get to the permitting process, we need to get through this variance. So, if that's a condition that we have to ultimately do that, and that's going to be set in, writing now to say that we will consolidate the lots, upon completion, sure, I can do that. But the intention is for the subject property is to demolish the two buildings, not the boathouse, and build what is being presented today.
Okay, I wasn't even referencing, I'm sorry, I should have clarified. I wasn't referencing the boathouse that's kind of down closer to the lake. I just meant the existing structures more on the hill, shall we say?
More on the hill, yeah.
Yeah.
They're
The houses and the garage.
Yes, those are being demolished. I just weren't sure if you're considering the 25807 also. So yes, because you mentioned 3 lots, but the house sits on 2 lots, and the house and the garage will be demolished. Yes.
And then are you going to keep the parking pad too then on the one lot?
Can you specify 1 lot? Because we own the 3 lots across the street as well.
I'm talking about the ones that are in question here. So 25823 has that.
No, there's a site plan with all the improvements that's been submitted.
Okay, so you're going to keep that here. I see it on your topographic survey.
Topographical survey is going to be existing what is existing now. Should be a site plan that shows 2 lanes that pull in from the
Right.
street. Which
Yeah.
would be, yeah. So
The-
that pad will not exist, nor will that concrete there either, nor will that garage, nor will that walkway from the garage.
So I just to interrupt, to clarify, Mr. Atwater does own this property, the 25807. However, because it contains a single family residence, we wouldn't treat it as, we can't consider it the same zoning lot as the other 2 parcels that Mr. Atwater owns. So staff has been focused on the proposal for these 2 parcels, which would include tearing down the existing house and replacing it with the new house. As shown on its drawing C001, which shows the site plan. What is being proposed is basically driveway, narrow paved strips for the car to car tires to drive along until it reaches the parking pad, which is closer to the house.
Right.
So hopefully that clarifies.
That makes more sense. Thank you, Krista. That's all I have for now. It's a lot of information. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks, Member Peterson. Member Rindle.
Yes, there's quite a bit of information. I'm reminded of a thing my mother used to tell my younger brother. If your brother sticks his head in the oven, does that mean you're going to do the same thing? A lot of this expert testimony was why others. I'm more interested in why yours without others. Why do you need these improvements? Not because of the neighbor did the same thing 10 years ago. I'm more interested in specifics to your specific project.
Sure, I appreciate the question. So back when we lived at 25851, we bought these. There's actually 5 lots. There's 3 across the street and these 2 that the house sits on. And our intention was to build. So the reason we're doing it is to, within the codes of county and building setbacks, our house sits on that. But because of the grade changes, we need that wall put up in order for having a conforming driveway. This is why we're doing it. The points that were stated in our argument was that we are building next to a non-conforming house that we need a wall up because their property dips approximately 10 feet down towards the lake. If we were given that option to take a driveway and dump it down and we have to excavate, we wouldn't be talking about this wall. But in order to follow the new laws that have been set since these other places have been built, we have to put up a retaining wall to retain that soil because of the extreme elevation changes. And that was pointed out multiple times in our presentation.
I understand where you're going with that.
Mhm.
It still begs the question, other than the neighbor's property, who we don't know when was done, Soil and Water Conservation District passed laws not that long ago, 20 years, 15 years ago. And I think you're hanging your hat on a lot of things that didn't apply at that time. And that's objectionable to me.
Okay, and I appreciate that. And that's probably why the result is those properties are as they are. But in order for us to build on this site, we will need retaining walls. There's no which way around it because of the slope of the land. And
that's what I want to hear you say.
Yes.
Not the fact that somebody else 35 years ago built a retaining wall that they needed. Don't care about that. That's done. It's water under the bridge.
Absolutely. The simple fact that we are stating in other past historicals is more of recent, is that other homes have been built. Ultimately, from our onset, is that because of the extreme grade changes that have been pointed out multiple times from north to south and east to west, because of the uniqueness of this property, this is why this wall was designed. And we need this wall along this side of the property in order to build.
Okay, fine. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Sounds good. Thanks, Member Rindle. Member Roche.
I think I would like to reserve my questions for later.
Sounds good.
I
You certainly can.
still kind of processing.
Sounds good. Member Starkey.
Hi, I have a couple questions and then just a comment. My question for staff would be were variances recently granted to the property on Oak Street, specifically 25873 regarding their impervious surface ratios?
I'll take that question. So I did yesterday take some time to look into the permit history for the properties that Mr. Atwater had included as examples in his application. So specifically 25873, I believe that's the one you're asking about, Oak Lane. The retaining, according to my notes on that one, there was a retaining wall in a house. The construction, the permit for that was issued prior to 2010. There were permits issued for it. There were no variances for that, indicating that it met codes at the time.
Okay, thank you. And then my other question is, so the properties across the street with the addresses on Bayview, are they considered in this impervious surface calculation?
No, they're not. If I may answer, sorry. No,
No,
they're
go
not.
ahead.
We're not allowed to cross the street is what I was told. We tried. We asked that question. So.
Okay. And then I guess my only other comment is, we've built homes on lakes, with steep grades, et cetera. And usually when you design a home, you design it with the property in mind. And I get the sense is that you had a design in mind and then are trying to fit the property to accommodate that. And so that's just a comment that I have.
May I answer on that?
Certainly.
Yeah, we've looked at different ways to do this, but if you look at the one picture that I have of the walls, you'll see my truck parked on that parking pad. And you can see how that extreme drop off happens very, very fast. In order to build, there's going to be a series of retaining walls, so on and so forth. So aesthetically, in the way that we thought that would be less impactful is to run a line, and it's only impacting one neighbor, to run it north to south. It's not visual via Earth satellite. It's not visual from the lake side. It's not visual from the street side. So it's the less impactful is that what we came up with instead of having series of retaining walls, which at 25807 we recently did. There's a series of retaining walls to put up a swing set for our kids in the backyard. And I think the north to south is less impactful than it would be to have series of terraces, both the front and backyard, so on and so forth.
Also, if you don't mind if I comment really quick with what you said about us putting a house on this land and not thinking about the slope and the topography of the land. If you actually look at it, we're trying to build a house into this huge slope. My dining room is underground as it on the same floor walks out to my kitchen, which ends up having the lake view. Like we're trying to put this house into the slope to build it into the land. And so I have to disagree with the fact that we didn't take this slope into consideration, because we definitely did. And just like Frank Lloyd Wright built his houses into the land, like that was a huge point of what we were trying to do with this.
Okay, no further questions or comments at this point.
Thanks, Member Starkey. Just a quick one. I know we've heard from neighbors that are in support of this. Have you had any neighbors that have had any objections or heard any concerns from others around there that we've not heard from either?
No.
Okay. And there was a lot of information, so I do agree with the rest of my members as well. Member Roche, I didn't want to forget about you to come back to you before I.
Well, I guess one thing that I hadn't been thinking about previously, because I guess I missed the fact that you also own that property next door, and so if the property that is not in consideration here, are you planning on tearing down that house, and does that change your plans for what you're doing here?
No.
Okay.
It would just be an impervious calculation increase or decrease, I should say. ISR ratio would go down. That would be the only thing that would happen. So ultimately, yes, the idea was that we bought the lot next door so that we wouldn't have an impact with ISR ratios. And then at the end of the build is what we were told from county within a year or so from a CO that house has to be demoed. And that was the sketched out plan, so to speak.
Okay, but that doesn't change the design of your plan.
No, it does not.
Okay. All right.
Is that all, Maggie?
For now.
Okay. Yeah, I heard Member Hockney.
I want to clarify a couple things. One thing I heard, did I hear him say the purpose of the wall is mainly for the driveway? Was that?
The highest point of that wall, and again, all these drawings have been submitted with various heights up and down this wall. The biggest part of that wall is along that driveway. So if you can see that planter Krista, can you point to that planter, the highest point? Right there is that highest point of that wall. And that's just to basically support that driveway. And once you get away from that, or as you work to the north, it declines quickly. And as you work to the lake, it drops rapidly.
Okay, I want to clarify something else. Both houses are going to be demolished, correct? That's what you're proposing?
That's not what we're proposing in this, no. What we're proposing is to just build on the subject 25823 and 25819. The other house, 25807, is not of discussion, I don't believe. I mean, I'm talking about it, but it's not what is in this plan at this time.
So just to clarify, Mr. Atwater, if he opted to tear the structure, the principal structure, or remove it from 25807, it's possible that all three parcels could be consolidated. And in that case, we would take the total site area into consideration with the ISR calculations. But as it stands and as it's proposed, as staff understands it, that's not the intent. The intent is to keep the house at 25807. Therefore, we cannot treat it as all one zoning lot. We have to look at just the two parcels, 25823, 25819, in the area that those contain. And that's what the ISR calculation is based on.
Krista, can I ask you a question really
So
fast?
the answer to the question is you're only demolishing the one house. That's the proposal.
The proposal as it stands of today, yes, because like I said, during this process of the variance, they brought up water well locations. They've brought up items having to do with the house. And I continue to ask, what do those have to do with the wall variance? So that is part of permitting, right? I assume the water well has nothing to do with this wall being built, is my understanding. So the conversation has been had that we bought 25807 from our initial build meeting in March at the county, saying that what if we bought the house next door? Would that help with ISR calculations? They said, yes, you can consolidate the lots. We purchased the home with the intention that that is a possibility. However, in reasons for this discussion today, it's not being considered from the building department that we can't consider that. Same with our impervious paper calculations. They will not accept that and consider that. So we have to go with what we have at hand, and that is 25819 and 25823 and the plans that were designed for this space.
So you're saying you got one answer and then now you got a different answer. That's what I just heard you say.
We've had, if you buy that, we can consolidate. Nothing's in writing. But the option, Krista, if I am still correct, we can consolidate those lots if need be or preferred to be and knock down that other house. That is a consideration we can have on the table. But in terms of this discussion, it was not allowed into this.
Can I add one thing? The schematic that we see in front of us with the home I didn't receive that in my packet. So I think for clarification, if we had that, we would have had a better understanding of what you're asking. I don't know if the other members have that schematic of your home, but the topographical drawings and the pilings and all that are really great. But this right here, what's on screen right now, helps us understand what you're requesting. And I think and I might be out of order here, but I think it's very reasonable. If you want to consolidate the two properties under one PIN, you've solved your issue of ISR.
Right. No, and I appreciate that. And I'm sorry, I had a full, I'm sorry, I'm not the best with terms, a whole list of each piece of the documents that I have submitted.
That were requested.
I have a picture of it. It's about 2.5 feet tall of paperwork that was submitted to Brad and Krista. That included both those isometric drawings. It included my existing topography, which includes 25819, 25823, and the 3 Bayview lots of complete topography. It included the future or the plan of what was going on. This is our gutter locations, which was requested, which I'm not sure. It included there's the new site plan. That was included. So I apologize if you didn't get it, but I believe we've submitted everything requested and then some to hopefully clarify. Well, the plan was to clarify as much as we could prior to
Yeah.
today.
So my
I
apologies
have that.
if you didn't get those drawings. They should have been included in the packets that were distributed, that we received from the applicant.
I have a big one here that's probably 3 foot by 2 foot that I'm trying to hold up with the house on it,
Yes, several of them.
of that diagram. So
Well, if you're a sailor, you can use it for sailing.
that's for sure.
But going back to that question, Krista, yes, I mean, we weren't allowed to include the 25807 into this, the formalities of this meeting, but it has been discussed. And the reason why we bought the lot was an option to consolidate the lots.
So I mean, if you're asking, have we had conversations, yes, we may have had some conversations at the counter or during meetings about what different possibilities, what your different options would be. However, when we're looking to do a zoning review and to, we have to look at what the facts are as they stand today. And if you submit a plan that shows that parcel included 25807 with that house, proposed to be demolished, then that would be something that we can take into consideration. But as your consultants, what they submitted to us was one house on the 2 parcels.
Absolutely. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
If I could also just add on to that, if the parcel at 25807 were to be included for the ISR, isn't it also possible, just based on the topographic maps, if the whole, and again, this is all hypothetical, if the project were moved a little bit to the east, that would resolve some of the height issues on this retaining wall? Is that
No.
correct? No,
No, because it continues to go up.
but not as steep, right?
No, consistently from our 2 parcels, including 25807, it's percentage wise, it's equivalent.
Okay,
It would.
I wish
I'm
it was
sorry
that
to interrupt.
easy. I wish we could just slide it into it. Yes, but again, that opportunity to buy that lot was after we were way into this development process. And that only came up to when we did a county review with, I forgot, I don't have the notes. I'm sure it's documented somewhere. There was 7 to 10 people there, along with our architect and builder. And we basically came to the table and said, what do we need to do differently? What are the issues that you foresee before we continue to go on with this?
Hey,
And
Krista, you were going to say something?
If the entire project were shifted over to the east to kind of be, I think what you're saying is like, could it include or be spread out over the 3 lots instead of the 2?
Correct.
That would most likely would alleviate the need for the setback variation.
The setback variation, right, as well as the ISR. There'll still be a retaining wall. There'll be a retaining wall or walls for any property that is developed there, likely.
And there's also the possibility of accommodating the impervious surface with the inclusion of permeable paving. But that's a fairly detailed process. Engineering staff would have to approve that material. It was something, again, that we had discussed with Mr. Atwater, had some conversations about. We've not done any sort of formal reviews of what types of pavers he would be using. So it's possible that can also be accommodated through the incorporation of permeable pavers.
Okay, thank you.
Are we saying this could not happen without this retaining wall? Is there some alternative to that? The house could not be built without this retaining wall, the 13-foot wall?
If there is an option, it hasn't been presented. Again, they say that there's other ways. In their reply, they said there's many other ways that this can be done. It hasn't been presented to us through our engineers, and architects who are also on this call. We've gone through this multiple ways to do it. And this is obviously the other way. We've talked about flipping the house the other way, putting it on the other side, but we increase elevation at 7 more feet, which would bring everything up higher. Shifting the whole house up the street, if we consolidate the lots next to the driveway to have a conforming driveway, we're going to still have that wicked elevation change going towards the lake and to the west. So this was the best solution that we could come up with.
So you're saying there's no other alternative to get this house built?
Not this one.
Christy, can you clarify again, and I guess maybe ask the Atwaters, are they willing now, based on what you have now, that other property there, are you willing to consider shifting it over there, Krista? If I understood your comments, that would alleviate some of the setback needs. If they would shift it over there, maybe explain that again, or I missed that.
Sure. Let me actually put the map again, because it might
Sure.
help to have the visual while we're talking about it. So as proposed, the house would be contained within these two parcels.
Correct.
Because Mr. Atwater does own this one, if he opted to tear this house down, then the whole project could shift further to the east, and he would have basically more, more space to work with in order to fit the same size house over a bigger, a wider distance. So that would, it would potentially alleviate the need for having the wall in such close proximity to the property line.
What, Chris, if I may ask, what's a setback that we have to get to if we had to? And would that be a consideration that if we did shift it 5 or 10 feet to the west, because the whole intention was that we're going to be displaced again because we're living in 25807. So to knock down all these structures, we have to find yet another place to live. So that's what the whole kind of exciting part was to buy 25807, was that we can live here and watch this process happen. Our kids get to see it happen, so on and so forth. And we still get to enjoy the lake life that we've obviously, hence the reason we moved to the lake. So to displace this again, I'm just saying if we can slide this thing 5 or 10 feet, that would allow a slight crossover onto the property lines. But this is a whole engineering renewal. This is a whole, it's another huge monster expense. And again, 3 years ago, this was presented to the county to say, can we do this? And never was it offered that slide it over. No, we're contained to that. So if that was given a choice that we have a setback of 5 or 10 feet of the building line and we have to move this thing 5 or 10 feet over the whole project, sure, we would absolutely consider it, but we would still like to live here during this process as opposed to being displaced again.
So, that's certainly your choice, how you decide to move forward. I would just, to respond to your question, the side yard, the minimum setback for a retaining wall is 4 feet. That's the variance that you're asking for, to reduce the side yard setback from 4 feet to 1 foot. So that's the minimum distance that code requires a retaining wall be from the side yard. And then just to respond, because we've been talking a lot about how long we have been working, at this process. And that is certainly the case. According to my notes, it goes all the way back to January 2018, which was sort of the start of the process when the county received and responded to a request for early assistance, which basically gave you in writing what the requirements were for these two parcels to build. And then it was in January 2019 when we actually received your application with drawings. And then since then, we have been working with you. It is a very complex project. I know we had some, there was a lot of back and forth with your consultants and various details that we had to work out with you. And so it has taken a while, but, and I can go into more detail about that if needed, if there's any questions.
Can I ask a question here?
Go ahead.
So there's the variance for the retaining wall. And then we have the issue of the impervious surface ratio. And I'm just throwing this out as an idea and trying to make it really simple. If the Atwaters said, if the house doesn't get moved in, because they're trying to build it into the land, as they said, and they live in this house that's adjacent in the adjacent property, and the properties get consolidated under one pin, and they commit to, after this house is built, that they tear down the other house, that takes care of the impervious ratio issue, correct?
Yes, we would have a process that they would be able to move through to live in one house while they were constructing the new one. There's an affidavit that form that we have that they would need to sign, stating that they agreed to remove the house within 6 months of completion of their new house. Eric, I know Eric Wagner has his hand up. Did you want to say something?
Go ahead, Eric.
Thank you. Eric Wagner, Planning Building Development Director. Good morning, everyone. So to Member Peterson's point or comment, the inclusion of that parcel to that third parcel to post development to satisfy an ISR requirement is really, in staff's opinion, that's sort of solving one problem, but not solving the larger problem. As we pointed out earlier in our comments at the hearing, the impervious surface ratio deviation that's being requested is quite small in comparison to the extent of deviation related to the wall itself in terms of setback and height. We believe that there would be an ability on the part of the applicant to potentially utilize alternative surfaces to address that ISR threshold within the confines of the two properties that are being considered for the development right now. The bigger issue that, in staff's opinion, as it's reflected in the report, is the location and height of the wall as it relates to the surrounding property, to the property to the west. And so, if the applicant was interested in the possibility of pursuing a development on all three parcels combined, as Krista noted before, that gives them a whole additional parcel to work with in terms of the configuration of the wall, the configuration of the house itself. Wouldn't necessarily be the same design in the end result. And clearly topography has a role in designing the house because, as the Atwaters noted, they want to build within the context of the land there and the topography. And so there would be some changes in what this house looks like, but having that additional third parcel at their disposal in designing this house could definitely improve the situation from the standpoint of impact on that western property as it relates to the wall location and the wall height.
Thanks, Eric.
But to be perfectly frank, staff would never design a project for an applicant. We simply respond to their requests for consideration, and we can assist them in their design process. We simply can't design the project in its entirety. That's why they have consultants on staff or on board. And so, as we've noted from day one in this process, we're here to assist. We're here to guide them to the extent that they have, ideas about what their project should look like. We can advise them on how to address the standards. And it was, as far as I'm aware, it was never considered by the applicant to incorporate all three parcels for the purpose of relocating and resizing the wall in the house.
Thanks, Eric.
But we're certainly open to it.
That goes back to my original question. Now that they do have that parcel, is that something that they would consider? I personally, to be honest, don't have a problem with the ISR. It's minimal. Mine is on the wall too, and I think that's what we're trying to. I think from what I'm hearing from several of the members is that's what we're trying to figure out how we can make that work. And now that additional parcel, we know that additional parcel is available as you have purchased it. Is that something you would consider that would in turn?
Absolutely, if I may. Going back, early assistance, Krista, again, 2017, 2018, we didn't own the house. So we were designing within our limitations. So if the board is willing to, and honestly, if we can eliminate ISR minimal because there's impervious paver options, right? Or the consolidation ultimately. So honestly, just being frank, take that, throw that out. Wall setback. It's a 4-foot setback. Yes, Krista? Okay, so we have to move, I believe we are 1 foot 4 inches actually off the property right now. We asked for 1 just to make sure, just on the air of caution. We slide this whole project 3 feet over. That gives our building setback on the eastern edge, right? Less, doesn't interfere with the other parcel per se, doesn't displace us, and really is very minimal from an engineering standpoint. However, it still leads us to that driveway and the grade change of an over 6 foot wall. And it's the biggest point, which is really roughly, I again guessing, I don't have it up in the CAD program out right now, but is maybe 40 or 50 of the wall, 40 or 50 feet of the wall that is, I mean, quote unquote, obnoxious. So the rest of the wall is relatively, you know, again, if we did railings on top of it, which was presented, that would minimize that wall height by 3 feet. I have given that stat to Brad. Brad, you asked for a stat that how much of the wall is over 6 feet. I gave you that stat, and that's from the opposing side, from the, you know, the house to the west. How much of that wall is over 6 feet? Again, keeping in mind that it's inclusive of the railing. You can take all those portions and knock it back down by 3 feet and put up a railing and call it a day.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
This is for staff. If a wall is broken into 2 walls, say 2 6-foot walls, is it still considered a 12-foot wall, or what is the distance between those 2 stepped walls that create, you know, 2 different walls? Does that make sense?
Talking about like terraced.
Yeah, a terrace wall. So if there were 2 6-foot terrace, are those considered 2 different walls, or is it still considered the elevation?
In general, we typically, I think what we've looked at in the past, I mean, it depends a little bit on the construction of the wall and the materials used, but typically it's a 2-foot separation between, like, the terraces are staggered to at least 2 feet or more apart to be considered individual walls. And we do have, you know, staff from building on hand if you've got other questions.
No, I was just talking in general because I'm trying to find a solution for the Atwaters, or a potential solution for them to discuss with their architects and designers. You know, it's like if they're 4 feet from the property line and then have 2 6-foot walls at the height, moving the whole project to the east, the problem, they don't even need to come for a variance. Is that correct? In theory?
I think the other 6-foot railing, the 6-foot wall needs another railing though, does it not?
Yeah,
So I
but
would
you
have a
got-
railing after a railing.
Maybe
From a
a
safety
6 and
standpoint.
3 in the railing. Let me ask a question. If you could you move it 4 foot onto that third lot? But then you wouldn't have a setback issue with the wall on the west side.
Correct, yes. I believe if they,
Could you
Lost our-
move it that far and not have to move out of the house while it's built?
correct, I believe that's, yeah, and yeah, if we slid everything over, if they minimized our setback on that lot, knowing that we would sign and consolidate and knock down, that would eliminate the setback, but it still doesn't give us, I don't think, enough room to do 2 feet. Is that right, Krista? 2 feet apart from a wall. But what's a wall height requirement that needs a railing? I think there's.
Really got a 10-foot wall and a 3-foot railing, what you're talking about. That's what we was talking about a while ago.
Yes,
Yeah, I'm not comfortable answering that question without actually I mean, we would need to see something, because you're talking about both vertical and horizontal distance and spacing, and I don't have time to properly look at that to be able to answer that question, whether or not you'd have this space. I mean, that's something that your consultants have to give to us.
no, and that's a fair too, is moving into this is, you know, how much more are we going to spend on consultants? Again, you know, we've been working on us paying tax dollars for 3 years. And it's like, how much longer is this process going to take in money to where we've continually, planned according to everything's following their code with this exception of, the 1 foot setback ISR and the height of the wall. And this wall is based on the uniqueness of this property, hence the variation.
And I'll piggyback on Denny's a little bit too. Again, ISR I don't have a problem with. I really don't have a big problem with the height of the wall. If you could move it over onto that third lot and still be able to live in that residence, completely understand your desire to do that. That would be okay with me. And I'm just speaking as myself, not for the rest of the board.
Talking to Craig, you're talking about the 10-foot wall with a 3-foot railing.
However they'd want to figure that out. Yes.
I mean, we're not talking about a 13-foot wall. We're talking about a 10-foot wall with a
10-foot with the
3-foot
railing.
railing. I didn't understand that in all the
Right.
literature we received.
Yep.
And I'm like, I have no issue with that.
Other members, how are you feeling as we're just kind of talking about here? Any other comments on that?
Maggie,
Maggie?
Yeah, so I guess what I want to ask the Atwaters is, so my parents bought a house that has a 0-foot setback. And for the most part, it's been fine. There have been times where they have been like, wow, we really wish we had, centered our house more on our piece of property. So I guess my question that I think you guys need to think about is, in the future, are you going to regret requesting this variance, building a house that close to the next door neighbor's property line, and when you could have had the opportunity to slide it over a little and have a little bit more breathing room, regardless of how the board feels about your proposal? I'm just saying, from my personal experience, that might be something you want to really consider now that you have the opportunity to move the house over and have more room on either side. And
I understand. And growing up at 25851, you know what? You never look to your east. You never look to your west. You look out to the lake. You don't care what's happening next door, honestly. So I think it would be the same, feel here. And I understand. I appreciate your thought and consideration. The problem that and why we're here today is that 4 or 5 years prior to knowing that we had the ability to move anything over, and the expense that we have spent getting to the point that we were at prior to buying 25807 has put us in this predicament to go back to the drawing board. And I don't know how much money it's going to cost us. It's just the decision of whether, if it's even going to get approved, to go through another X amount of years of paying the tax money on a vacant house, to continue to live here into this house that's, I think it's at least 105 years old. I mean, the whole place creaks. And to just not do anything and spend the money. And I'm not saying it's worst case scenario, but we've looked at options to move to other towns and relocate to a different lake, because we put so much effort forth into this. Again, prior to knowing that we had 25807, can we kick it over 3 or 4 feet? Yes. Will that accommodate the setback? Sure. But we're still ending up with a wall issue. And to kick it over more is going to be more engineering, more time. Engineers, as you know, are completely slammed with the development that's happening. I don't think our engineers probably going to get on this for 6 more months to resubmit, to then go through this whole process again. I don't know the outcome or future. I wish I had that crystal ball to know. However, the reason we're here today is that we bought these lots, worked with the county, had early assistance, had an early meeting with everybody to talk about the wall. And again, it seemed very simple when we were at the meeting is, you just got to go through the formality, getting a variance for the wall. Okay. And that's what we kind of did. Structural engineers have been involved. All the right parties have been involved. And again, the non-conforming lot to the west has hindered us. And the uniqueness of the land is why we have this wall. The options, yes, to entertain them, to slide this thing over 3 or 4 feet if it's minimal with engineering stuff, absolutely. But what are those next steps and timelines and everything else?
Money.
And money, of course, that it's going to take to get to the next piece.
But you're willing to move 4 feet to the east.
Depending on how much money that's gonna cost for our engineers to move this house, but yes.
We would absolutely, we would consider moving this 4 feet. If there's no I mean, I'll move it to the property line if need be. That would probably give us.
4 feet, that takes care of the setback issue.
Yep.
Denny, and that's where I am with you as well. And that's why I asked the other
I'm
members.
all right with that. And I don't know what the county has to do to make all that happen, to put the 3 lots together, but I'm all right with that.
All right, let's go around and just see how everybody else is feeling since we kind of talked about it. Maria, comments on how you're feeling just about the general discussion on moving or acting as it is today?
I concur with if they could move it over the 4 feet, that it alleviates your setback issue. Unfortunately, as a board member, it's not our place to empathize, although I will step out of line again and say I do empathize with the fact of the time and expense that you have put forward in this dream project of yours. But I think for conformity and safety and harmony, if you could move it over the 4 feet, I would concur with my fellow board members.
Member Starkey, your comments?
If they were to move it over at least 4 feet to the east, that would take away the side yard setback, which I'm concerned over. The impervious surface, again, not super concerned over, but if they were to tear down that other house, that takes care of that. And then I could live with that very tall wall, which is only 10 plus the railing. So, and then at least it's not right on top of the neighbor. So.
Sounds good. Thank you. Member Roche?
I guess I'm leaning towards a move it over. But I'm still undecided thinking.
Completely understand. I'm just trying to get a feel for the board to see what direction we want to go. Member Reindl. Didn't see John. He was there a minute ago. Member Reindl still there, Brad?
Let me check and see if we can get him back on.
Okay. And I guess my comment would be that if I was to act on this today, the way it is presented, I would most likely not be in favor of it. But if you could move that 4 feet over, I certainly would be okay with the ISR, as I said, and the 10 feet and 3 feet. I think since that option is available now, that would make the most sense. And the applicant seems inclined to be okay looking at that, still allowing you to live in your house, have the documentation that you would have to demolish it after 6 months of completion. And I think staff sounds like they're willing to work with you on that route as well. That's kind of where I'm at personally.
Mr. Chairman, I know that Chris has stepped away to check on member.
Yeah.
Can I read this letter that came into our?
I was just going to say, I know we had one other letter that came this morning, so go ahead, Brad.
Into our mailbox, 11:30 yesterday. This is from Ryan Ripley, who is the treasurer of the Long Lake Improvement and Sanitation Association's address is 34958 Augustana, which I think is on the south side of the lake. To whom it may concern, I am writing in support of my good friends, Bob and Jenna Atwater. Bob and Jenna are active and supportive members of the Long Lake community. In my work with the Lake Association, I found them to be most generous with their time, resources, and always willing to make the lake and surrounding communities better. With regard to the requested variance, I cannot claim personal expertise in the technical matters of the case. I can, however, share my obsession that the Atwater family has invested significantly in the design and engineering of what I believe will be a strong improvement to our properties around the lake that have fallen to disrepair prior to the Atwater's acquisition. As with any lake community, the Atwater's property and those adjacent to it have a particularly unusual grave. There are no two properties truly alike, and there is a longstanding precedent for adapting lakefront properties such that they're both usefully and aesthetically pleasing. I believe the Atwater's plan is to be in keeping with historical precedents. In closing, Long Lake is a better place than the Atwater's. It is certainly my sincere hope that the board will consider their good standing and long-term contribution to the community and ultimately decide in their favor of the variance. Sincerely, Ryan Ripley.
And there were no other comments received, correct? That was the only one.
That's all we received
for today. Okay, good. Krista, was John still over there?
Yeah, so he's experiencing some technical difficulty. We're trying to get him back online. He is still here though.
Okay, sounds,
If you want to get his, yeah, so hopefully he'll be back online in just a minute.
okay, sounds good. I don't think, we don't have any other public, correct? Just so I don't miss anybody. No one else has signed in since we started the
Let me
hearing.
just double check the inbox. We don't have anybody in the meeting. Let me just make sure we haven't, no, we have not received any more public comment either through the email.
Sounds good. Memorandum has not popped up. I guess I'll just bring it back to the Atwaters before we close testimony on it. You've heard kind of what the rest of the board has said. Your thoughts and feedback on that, I guess, just as we kind of come forward for a vote here on. And Chris, I don't know if, or Brad, it would be best if, I don't think they'd have to reapply for this. Would we be able to continue it? But the plan would be changing, so we can't continue it, I guess. Give me some direction on how they would proceed if we were to go with including that third lot. If they came back asking for that third lot, I guess.
It's possible. You do have the option to table it and continue it with a resubmittal. I mean, I would potentially need to check with our state's attorney's office on what the noticing requirements would be for that. Alternatively, if you were to deny the, you have the option of denying one request but approving the height, and then they would just have to redesign it to conform to the minimum setback.
Correct. Mr. and Mrs. Atwater, any comments on that?
She's saying to the setback, but we're changing the setback on the other side now, right?
So I think what you're asking, and that's why when the question was raised earlier, if you could accommodate it, there are several variables at play. We would need to look and see how it was going to be designed, because if the intention is to remove the house at 25807, include all three lots into one zoning lot, then the setbacks are different compared to what which property line you're having to meet a setback from. That makes sense. So if you're just looking to okay, hold on, let me get John back in. Yeah, I'll get him back in. Hold on. Sorry, just one moment. Eric, did you want to say something maybe while I'm working to get John in?
Go ahead, Eric.
Thank you. So the way I see it at present, given the discussion of the ZBA members and the expression on the part of the applicants, a willingness to look at other options, I see a number of different possibilities here the ZBA could consider. The first being, as Krista pointed out, essentially denying whatever requests you feel it's appropriate to deny, if that's your inclination. And they would come back to staff with some alternative plans that would either meet the requirements and not even require variances, or come back with a plan that meets some requirements, but not all of them, in which case there would be another variance. Second option would be to, as Krista pointed out, continue the hearing to give us the opportunity to convene with the state's attorney's office to determine what the notice requirements would be to essentially modify the request on behalf of the applicant to take into account a different fact pattern. In which case, at that point, once the request was formulated by the applicant, we could then reconvene the public hearing process with whatever notice provisions had to be addressed.
I don't want to pay for an additional day.
Any of your mic's on.
And the third option would be, if the Atwaters are interested in avoiding the variance process altogether and utilizing all three parcels, as I said before in the hearing, there's an opportunity to redesign the project in such a way that it meets all the standards of the ordinance, including this notion of, breaking the wall up into two different terraced walls of a smaller height individually. While that may still be imposing from a bulk standpoint, at least it meets the requirements if it's technically two separate walls at two different locations. So it's clearly a very complex decision that the ZBA is going to have to make right now. But we wanted to make it clear that there are a number of options at your disposal as you kind of think about what to do next, given the complexity of the scenario.
I mean, the answer ultimately is time and money. I don't know, if this is continued, we started to go through a variance process before, but then there was an issue that the county didn't know that the septic line ran through our backyard. So we had to go back and redesign. So we fixed that. And, it's how much longer is this going to be a continuation? Do I have to pay for another variance hearing? How much engineering and time and effort is going to go into all this? And again, if I may ask a question and more towards Krista or I don't know, Eric, if that house on Olive that was a permit in 2019 that has over 6-foot walls and is recently built, was there a variance done for that process? On Olive, and again, I don't mean to use other houses and go back to those. I'm just wondering at 60+% ISR and retaining walls over 6 feet
Doesn't go inside.
that are exposed to both the neighbor and the public on the street side. I mean, we can mention the house to the north of Olive that I also, I'm just curious whether variance is done for that house or was that?
So there was a couple different houses that you had referred to in your application that were on Olive. To my knowledge, I'd have to go back and double check. I don't believe there were any variances issued. One of the houses, I do know the wall was rebuilt to replace the dilapidated existing wall.
Just I don't know. To our discussion now, I don't think it's germane to what other variances have been done. I guess we're looking at this parcel as its own parcel.
Sure, of course.
I do understand that. I think Eric's option, and there were questions about continuing, and it's up to you what you decide to do. But I think, in my opinion, continuing this hearing, and they can continue it out as many months as we need to, instead of having to refile for the hearing, as long as there's no huge changes that you're making, I think would probably be best for you. So you wouldn't have to refile, wouldn't have to pay again for another hearing. Continue that hearing allows you to move along with the process, ability to work with staff as you continue the hearing, and then to come back. We certainly could act on, and again, this is all to you, one or two or all three of these requests today, but those may change too based on what you find as you move forward. So I don't know that you want to pigeon your hole into something and then having to come back again and ask for another change. So I guess we're kind of just looking what direction you would want to go. John, you're back on. We can see you and hopefully hear you too. And I know you missed some of the discussion, but we just kind of centered around using that third lot that they have now, allowing them to live there as they build this new property that'll allow them to possibly shift over this a little bit to avoid the side yard setback there. The maximum height still may come into play, but with the impervious surface ratio didn't seem to be a big concern for most of the zoning board members right now. Any comments you had, John, before we?
Well, I did hear the explanations and the remedies, possible remedies by staff. And quite frankly, the ball is in the petitioner's court. I'm sure that he can tell which way the ball is going to bounce right now. And it probably would be to his best interest to have this continued, given the expense and so on and so forth.
Thanks, John. Any other comments? Eric, I see your hand up there. Sorry about that.
Thank you. So one point I'd make to sort of help clarify that continuation process and why that might be beneficial. If in fact the applicant's willing to, work with staff on an alternative design that takes into account that third lot, and uses the continuation of the hearing to buy time to do that, to provide that for that consultation. It may well be that at the end of that consultation, there's been a route determined that would allow the applicant to even avoid seeking a variance or variances. And so it's, in some ways, it's that taking that approach provides for multiple opportunities, multiple outcomes. And so if it turns out that, after a continuation, the applicant finds a design solution that's going to meet their needs, but also satisfy the requirements without seeking a variance, then it's simply a matter of opening the hearing or basically withdrawing the request at that point. So that might be a beneficial way of working towards a solution that might meet both the requirements and the applicant's desires to improve their property and build their dream home.
Correct. And that was kind of my suggestion too, to continue would be best. But if there's no other comments from board members, I will turn it over to Atwaters to let us know how you wish to proceed. If you'd like us to act on the items before us today, or if you'd like to ask for a continuance at this point to continue working with staff and your design.
How far out can we ask for a continuance? Because I don't even know from,
we can continue it on a month-to-month basis typically. And as long as staff continues to inform us that it is continued, we will just continue it until you come back to staff and say that you're ready.
Are you guys going to be looking for complete new drawings of this property as it moves over those 4 feet? Like, yes, engineers, but like the whole drawing process, like it's not like they can copy and paste this house 4 feet over. We're going to have to go through and pay them all of this money to move the house 4 feet to then come back and ask you guys again. How do you guys feel about this? I feel like, yes, we're willing to knock down the house next door. Yes, if it was as easy as engineering, just showing you how we'll move the house 4 feet, but I know how long this process took just to design this house. And I know that they can't just copy and paste it 4 feet next door. Like we're going to have to invest a lot of money again to move it.
and I mean, we're limited to how far we can move over. I continued to get issues of where the well location goes prior to this meeting. And I don't think that has anything to do with that would fall under the building permit. But in regards to wall, and, I don't know if we're going to have enough room to move it over, 4 feet, up 3 feet, over 2 feet, up 3 feet. I don't know if that's going to happen. And as we move it over, we continue to go up the hill, which means those walls will increase. So
Understood. But staff will, there are certain requirements that they'd have to come before us. You certainly can come before us with whatever plans you have. Once the continuance continues and you say, here's what we've got, and the board can make a decision based on what's provided to us. Staff sounds like they're willing to continue working with you on that too, but I can't tell you what, how this board will ultimately feel at the end. We can't predict that if you move it, you're going to get it, you're not going to get it. Sure. But I think the more you can do to present to this board that you have made the effort, you've looked at other options, and here's an option that we kind of came to today. I think it would behoove you to kind of go down that route at this point, just based on what I'm hearing from the other board members.
Absolutely. We appreciate that. What is normal start? And if I may ask Eric, we redesign this thing in a week. How much time do you guys need to review? Just hypothetically speaking.
Typically, we would take for a re-review, it's 10 working days.
Okay. So then we can be back on potentially another.
So my recommendation would be to continue it to the board's next review meeting, which would be April 7th.
What I'm saying is, if I have drawings done within 2 weeks and then you have 10 days to review them, is it good to be on the slate for the next board meeting?
Our review meetings take place the first Thursday of every month. So we would continue until, if you didn't have it by that, if staff didn't have it in time and it wasn't continued and we didn't have enough time to review it. So you'd have April, then you'd have that first Thursday in May. So we can continue it on month-to-month basis, being that first Thursday of each month, based on when it's submitted and staff's review of it. But if you weren't ready in April, we certainly would continue it again till May and continue that process until you were prepared.
I mean, we always have the option to continue it further out if you felt April would be cutting too close, we could, continue it to the May review date. The review meeting date.
Okay. Well, then I guess for our position as of right now is a continuance.
Okay, sounds good. Eric, did you have something else? I know I saw your hand go up. No, you're okay. Perfect. With that, the board, the petitioner is asking for a continuance to the April review meeting at this time. They will work with staff, and if they need a continuance further out from that, they can ask for that, and staff will inform us of that as well. So at this time, what do we say, April 7th, Krista?
Yes, April 7th, Thursday.
At this time, a motion would be in order then to continue hearing 737-2021 till April 7th, 2022 at 9 a.m. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Member Peterson, I think I heard a second from Member Reindl, possible. Any discussion? Brad, let's do a roll call.
Member Peterson,
Aye.
member Rindle,
Aye.
member Hockney,
Aye.
member Starkey,
Aye.
member Roche,
Aye.
and Chair Kaplan.
Aye.
Meeting is continued to April 7th, 2022. Meeting start time at 9 a.m.
Great, thank you. Mr. and Mrs. Atwater, thank you. Thank you for your presentation today, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you back here in April or whenever you are ready to. And I know staff will work with you and hopefully get to that dream house for you.
Appreciate the time. Appreciate everybody's time.
You're welcome. Thank you. Board members, if you want to stick on just to see if staff has any updates, I know we've got a couple hearings in March. So Krista, we'll turn it over to you, and Brad, if you got anything for us. And we do have the new member that'll be starting, Lawrence. We'll be doing an introductory meeting with him next week. Staff will be going over kind of what happens here, and I'll be meeting with him as well. And then he will be starting at our March meetings. I think you all received his resume from myself. I did have a conversation with him. He is eager to join the board. Has some background. I think he was on the ZBA in Buffalo Grove for a couple of years. Is a patent attorney by trade. So we will look forward to welcoming him in March. With that, Brad or Krista, anything else?
I would just add that March is shaping up to be a very busy month. So we've got, as it stands right now, currently, we have 3 cases scheduled for March 10th. I believe we have 2 variance cases scheduled for the 20, whatever the 4th Thursday is. I think it's the 24th. And then 1 CUP hearing on March 22nd. So.
Perfect. Sounds good. Brad, anything else from you?
No, thank you.
Nope. Thanks to all the staff that joined us today. We appreciate you having there. If we had questions, since we haven't continued for a while, sometimes it's just a reminder to kind of hold on to this packet since there was a lot of information, throw it in your file. So I assume they'll be resubmitting some new information, but just in case, then you've got the background on it to reference if we talk about it in the future. Anything from board members?
Just have a question. Any
Linda.
talk of us return to live meetings, or with the changes coming, or?
I am hoping once mask mandates lift, once the county board goes back to in-person meetings, then committees and commissions are allowed to go back to in-person meetings. So as soon as they do, it is my intention, and staff just has to make that shift over. It takes them a little bit to shift things over if we've got hearings scheduled for Zoom already. Krista, you may have a further update in that, but I'm eager to get back too.
Yeah, no, you said it, took the words right out of my mouth. It did prompt me though to remember one more thing I wanted to update. In order to stay current with best practices, as long as we are still in the remote world, in order to stay current with best practices and Open Meetings Act regulations, we will be shifting the Zoom platform to a slightly different style in March. So you'll see we're moving to a different format. It still will be Zoom, but you'll see some minor differences. So just a heads up, we'll give you instructions and kind of lead you through that transition as best we can. But just wanted to kind of give you, put that on your radar, that starting with the March 10th hearing will be in a webinar format versus a meeting format for Zoom.
Great, sounds good. So yeah, most of March we do intend to continue Zoom, and then hopefully after that we'll see how April looks too. But I agree. With that, anything else from anybody else? If not, thank you all. It's nice to have all of you here today. Have a great afternoon, and we'll see you in March. With that, we never really adjourned that other meeting, so if somebody wants to just make that a motion. Sounds good. Member Starkey makes the motion to adjourn, and with that, we are adjourned. Thanks all.